The sound of the pen scratching against the divorce decree was the loudest thing in the courtroom. It sounded like a shovel hitting dry earth. My ex-wife, Elena, didn't just sign the papers. She carved her name into them. She looked up at me, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of malice and absolute victory. She pushed the document toward her shark of a lawyer, adjusted the collar of her designer blazer, and flashed me a smile that was colder than the winter outside. "It's done, Arthur," she said, her voice smooth, lacking even a hint of the history we shared. "Please have your things out of the master suite by Friday. I'm hosting a gala on Saturday, and I don't want your dusty work boots cluttering the foyer." The judge looked at me, peering over his spectacles with a look of pity. "Mr. Vance, do you understand that by signing this, you are relinquishing all claims to the Vance estate, including the primary residence, the guest lodge, and the surrounding 6 acres of land?" "I understand, Your Honor," I said. My voice was steady, too steady. My lawyer, a good man named Simon, who had aged 10 years trying to fight this battle for me, kicked me under the table. He was practically vibrating with frustration. He had whispered to me 10 minutes ago that we could fight this, that her demands were unreasonable, that I built that house with my own 2 hands, but I ignored the kick. I picked up the pen. "I am giving her exactly what she asked for," I told the judge. I signed. Elena let out a short, sharp laugh of disbelief. She grabbed the keys from the table before the ink was even dry as we walked out of the courtroom. Her new boyfriend, a 20-something personal trainer named Jocks, who looked like he had more hair gel than brain cells, was waiting in the hallway. He wrapped an arm around her waist, looking at me with a smirk. "Thanks for the house, old man," Jocks muttered as they passed. "Enjoy the view," I replied. I walked out into the rain, feeling the cold water hit my face. Simon chased after me, grabbing my shoulder. "Arthur, have you lost your mind?" Simon hissed, shielding his briefcase from the rain. "That property is valued at $8 million. You just handed it to a woman who cheated on you, lied about your finances, and destroyed your reputation. You walked away with nothing but your truck and your tools. Why?" I stopped at the curb. I looked back at the courthouse doors where Elena and Jocks were high-fiving. "Simon," I said quietly, "do you remember when I told you the land that house sits on was originally a marsh?" "Yeah, so what?" "You drained it. You engineered it. I engineered a solution based on active hydraulic displacement." I corrected him. "It requires a specific set of industrial pumps in the sub-basement to run 24/7. They need maintenance every 30 days, calibration every 60. If those pumps stop, the water table rises." "And?" Simon asked, confused, and I smiled for the first time in a year. "The instruction manual for the foundation system wasn't included in the settlement. It's in my head, and I'm not the maintenance man anymore." To understand why I was willing to let an $8 million mansion sink into the mud, you have to understand how much I loved the woman who took it from me. Met Elena 20 years ago. I was a junior architect, dusty and broke, trying to make a name for myself in a city made of steel and glass. She was an interior designer, fierce and colorful, capable of walking into a gray room and seeing a rainbow. We were a team. We built a life. Brick by brick I started my own firm, Vance Architecture. And she handled the interiors. We were unstoppable. We weren't rich, but we were building something real. The dream of the Vance estate started 5 years into our marriage. We found a plot of land on the edge of the cliffs overlooking the ocean. It was breathtaking. The view alone was worth millions, but the price was suspiciously low. No one else wanted it. The geotechnical reports were a nightmare. The soil composition was unstable, a mix of clay and subterranean water flow that made traditional foundations impossible. Every other developer saw a money pit, saw a challenge. "I can fix it," I told Elena, standing in the tall grass, the wind whipping her hair across her face. "I can build a floating slab foundation with a hydraulic compensation system. It'll be an engineering marvel. LR masterpiece." She squeezed my hand. "I believe you already build me a castle." So I did. I poured everything I had into that ground. I didn't just spend money. I spent my soul. I worked 18-hour days for 3 years. I missed birthdays. I missed anniversaries. I missed the simple, quiet moments of a marriage because I was obsessed with conquering that soil. I designed a system of 12 industrial-grade pumps buried deep beneath the concrete slab. They were the heartbeat of the house. Sensors monitored the soil density and water pressure, automatically adjusting the pumps to keep the foundation level. It was brilliant. It was overly complex, and it was fragile when the house was finished. It was featured in Architectural Digest floor-to-ceiling glass walls, a cantilevered master bedroom that hung over the cliff edge, radiant heating, smart home integration. It was the pinnacle of modern luxury, but as the house rose, my marriage fell. The success of the firm brought money. Real money, and the money changed Elena. It started slowly, a shift in wardrobe, then a shift in friends. The eclectic, artistic woman I married was replaced by a status-obsessed socialite who cared more about the label on a wine bottle than the taste of the wine. She stopped coming to job sites. She stopped asking about my day. Our conversations turned into transactions. I need $50,000 for the gala committee. We need to upgrade the guest lodge. The Davises are coming. Why are you wearing that? Go change. I tried to keep up. I bought the cars she wanted. I went to the parties. I stood in the corner holding a champagne flute while she charmed investors and politicians, introducing me as her husband, the builder, with a tone that suggested I was just another contractor she had hired. The breaking point didn't come with a scream. It came with a whisper. About 6 months ago, I came home early from a site inspection in the city. I had a headache, and I just wanted to sit on my deck and listen to the ocean. I parked my truck down the road so I wouldn't disturb Elena's luncheon she had mentioned that morning. I walked up the driveway quietly. The house was silent. There was no luncheon. I walked into the foyer, my boots clicking softly on the marble I had hand-selected in Italy. I heard giggling coming from the library. The library was my sanctuary. It was the one room in the house Elena hadn't redecorated in beige and white. It still smelled of old paper and leather. I pushed the door open. Elena was on the leather Chesterfield sofa. She wasn't reading. She was entangled with Jocks, the personal trainer she had hired to tone up for summer. They froze. Jocks scrambled for his shorts. Elena didn't even look ashamed. She just looked annoyed. You're home early, she said, pulling her silk robe tight. I live here, I said, my voice feeling like it was coming from someone else. Not for long if you keep barging in like this, she snapped. The audacity took the air out of my lungs. I'm the one barging in? Elena, you're sleeping with a kid half your age in my library. It's our library. Arthur, and frankly, Jocks listens to me. You haven't listened to me in years. You're married to this house, not to me. I built this house for you. I roared, and now I want it without you in it, she said, cold as ice. The divorce papers were served 3 days later. She didn't just want a separation. She went for the throat. She alleged emotional neglect. She claimed I was hiding assets she hired a forensic accountant to tear apart my firm's books. She froze our joint accounts. I moved into a motel. I watched from a distance as she threw parties in the house I built. I saw Jocks driving my Porsche. My lawyer, Simon, sat me down in his office, looking grim. It's bad, Arthur, Simon said, rubbing his temples. Since you didn't sign a prenup, I know. You were in love. She is entitled to half, but she's not asking for half. She's leveraging the lifestyle maintenance clause. She wants the house, the cars, and full alimony if we fight this. It will drag on for 2 years. The legal fees will bankrupt your firm. So what are my options? I asked. You can settle. Simon said, give her the house, keep the firm, rebuild. I thought about the pumps. I thought about the red warning light that had started blinking on the control panel in the sub-basement. The week before I moved out, it was a filter obstruction, warning minor, but if ignored for 3 months, it leads to system overheating. If I give her the house, I asked, does she assume all liability for the property? Simon nodded. Yes, once the title transfers, the condition of the property is solely her responsibility as is. Where is why? Draft the agreement. I said, give her everything she wants. The first month after the divorce was surprisingly peaceful. For me, I rented a small cabin about 20 miles inland. It was quiet. I went back to working on smaller projects, renovations, decks, things I could do with my hands. It was therapeutic. Meanwhile, Elena was living the high life. I knew this because she was posting about it incessantly on social media. My friends, the few who hadn't sided with her, would send me screenshots. Snapshot: Elena holding a glass of rose on the balcony. Caption: finally. Free the queen of the castle. Snapshot: Jocks diving into the infinity pool caption. New energy in the house, no more negative vibes. She threw a freedom party 2 weeks after the papers were signed. From what I heard, there were 300 people. Their DJ, caterers, the works. I zoomed in on one of the photos from the party. It was taken in the lower lounge, which sat just above the foundation level in the background. Near the baseboards, I saw something that made me grin. A hairline crack in the drywall. It was starting. The Vance estate wasn't just a house. It was a living organism. The soil beneath it was constantly shifting, expanding with rain and contracting with heat. The hydraulic pumps I installed were designed to float the concrete slab. Think of it like a waiter holding a tray of drinks. On a rocking ship, as the ship moves, the waiter's arm adjusts to keep the tray level, but the waiter was tired and the waiter hadn't been fed without the monthly calibration. The sensors would drift without the filter changes. The pumps would clog with silt. 3 weeks post-divorce, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey Arthur, it's Jocks. Look, man, I know things are weird, but the pool isn't heating up. Elena said you handle the maintenance stuff. Where's the breaker for the heater? I stared at the phone. The sheer arrogance of asking me for tech support on the house he stole from me was breathtaking. I typed back, not my house, not my problem, call a plumber. I blocked the number. A week later, the weather turned. A massive storm front moved in off the coast. We're talking 3 days of torrential rain, the kind of rain that turns hard earth into soup. I sat in my cabin, listening to the rain hammer the tin roof, sipping coffee. I knew exactly what was happening at the estate. The rain would be saturating the clay soil, the ground would be swelling, the pressure on the foundation walls would be increasing by thousands of pounds per square inch. The sensors in the sub-basement would be screaming for the pumps to increase pressure to compensate, but the pumps were likely running on clogged filters. They would be straining, overheating, and then inevitably failing. I didn't have to wait long for the news. It started with a call from Simon. Arthur, Simon said, sounding out of breath, I just got a call from Elena's lair. They're threatening to sue. Sue for what? I gave her everything. She says you sabotaged the house before you left. She says the basement is flooding. I laughed a genuine belly laugh. I didn't sabotage anything. Simon, I just stopped pressing the buttons. Did she hire a property manager? I don't think so. Did she hire a structural engineer to take over the monitoring contract? No. Then she's guilty of negligence. I said, tell them to read the owner's manual. Oh wait, I designed the system. There is no manual. Arthur, this is serious? She's claiming the house is uninhabitable. The lower level has 3 inches of water. Only 3 inches? I checked the weather forecast. It was supposed to rain for another 24 hours. Tell her to buy some rain boots. It's going to get worse. I hung up, but I couldn't resist. I had to see ID. Put on my raincoat and drove toward the coast. I didn't go up the driveway. I parked on the public road that ran along the cliff below the property. I took out my binoculars from the road. The house looked magnificent, a beacon of wealth glowing in the storm, but through the lenses, I could see the signs. The cantilevered master bedroom, the one that hung over the edge, looked wrong. The angle was off. It was tilting just a fraction of a degree, but to an architect's eye, it was screaming. The foundation was shifting unevenly. One side of the house was sinking faster than the other as I watched. A black SUV sped up the driveway. It was a plumbing van. Good luck. I thought a plumber can fix a toilet. A plumber cannot fix a geological failure. I watched for an hour. The plumber left after 20 minutes. He probably took one look at the industrial hydraulic system and ran for the hills. Then the lights in the house flickered. The electrical main was grounded through the sub-basement. If the water level rose high enough to touch the junction boxes, zap, the entire mansion went dark. I lowered the binoculars. The queen of the castle was now ruling over a cold, dark, sinking ship. The next morning, the storm broke. The sun came out, illuminating the disaster. I was eating breakfast at a local diner when my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text this time. It was a notification from the local news app. Breaking. Multi-million-dollar cliffside mansion evacuated due to structural instability. I clicked the link. There was aerial footage from a helicopter. The Vance estate looked like it had been broken over a knee. A massive crack ran zigzag through the roofline. The beautiful glass walls of the living room had shattered. Sending shards onto the patio. The pool had cracked in half, draining thousands of gallons of water into the already saturated soil. Accelerating the slide, the reporter was standing at the police tape at the end of the driveway. Authorities have condemned the property. The reporter shouted over the wind. Residents say they heard a loud groan in the middle of the night, followed by the sound of glass exploding. Geologists are calling it a catastrophic foundation failure. I sipped my coffee. It tasted excellent, but Elena wasn't done. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Elena. I hadn't blocked her number because, frankly, I wanted to hear this. "You bastard." She screamed the moment I answered. She was hysterical. I could hear sirens in the background. "You did this. You rigged the house to blow up." "Hello, Elena," I said calmly. "I didn't rig anything. The house requires maintenance. Remember how I used to spend every Saturday morning in the basement? You used to complain that I was ignoring you. Fix it." She shrieked. "Get over here and fix it. The city put a red tag on the door. They won't let me in to get my clothes." "I can't do that, Elena. It's not my property. I have no legal right to enter the premises. Remember the court order? Stay away from the Vance estate." "I don't care about the court order. The house is falling into the ocean. Jocks is freaking out. He left me." "Jocks seems like a fair-weather friend," I noted, "or perhaps a fair-weather foundation friend, Arthur." "Please," her voice cracked, shifting from anger to desperation. "This is my entire net worth. If the house is condemned, it's worth nothing. The insurance won't cover earth movement. You know that. I would be destitute." I paused. I let the silence hang there. "Arthur?" She whimpered. "I tried to tell you." I said softly. "In the courtroom, I tried to say that the house was a burden, not a prize, but you were too busy taking the keys." "I'll give it back," she cried. "I'll sign it back over to you. Just save it. You're the only one who knows how the pumps work. It's too late." "Elena," I said, "once the slab cracks, the hydraulic pressure is lost. The system can't be repressurized. It's over. The house is just expensive rubble now." No. There has to be a way. There is one thing." I said. "What?" "Anything. Tell me." "Check the foundation of your next relationship before you build on it." I said. I hung up, but the story wasn't over, not by a long shot, because while the house was destroyed, the land was still there, and Elena, desperate and broke, began to dig. She hired a salvage crew to try and pull value out of the wreckage, and that's when they found the safe. I had forgotten about the wall safe in the sub-basement. It was hidden behind the pump controls. I hadn't opened it in 10 years. Elena called me 3 days later. Her voice was different, this time dangerous. "We found the safe." "Arthur," she whispered. My blood ran cold. "And we found the blueprints." She continued. "The original blueprints, the ones you didn't file with the city." I gripped the phone. "Elena, don't. You built a secret room, Arthur," she hissed. "A room that isn't on the tax maps, a room underneath the garage. What's in there, Arthur? Why is it lead-lined?" She had me. The foundation failure was an accident of negligence, but the room under the garage? That was intentional, and what was inside it could send me to prison for a very long time. "I'm going to the police," she said, her voice dripping with renewed venom. Unless what?" "Unless you pay me $5 million in cash. Consider it a consultation fee for the house repairs." I closed my eyes. I had won the battle of the house, but I had left a loaded gun in the rubble, and she had just picked it up. I had to get back onto the property. I had to get into that bunker before she did. "Meet me there tonight." I said. "Midnight? Don't call the police. Bring the checkbook." She said. I looked at the clock. It was 4 p.m. I had 8 hours to plan a heist into my own former home, which was currently sliding off a cliff, to retrieve a secret that could ruin my life. I grabbed my hard hat and my sledgehammer. It was time for one last renovation. The night air was thick with salt spray and impending disaster. I parked my truck a mile down the coast and hiked the rest of the way, using the tree line for cover. The Vance estate looked like a wounded beast in the moonlight. The entire structure had listed 15 degrees toward the ocean. The front door was hanging off its hinges, and the sound of the structure groaning, metal twisting, wood snapping, was constant. Like a low-frequency scream, I saw a flashlight beam cutting through the darkness of the garage. Elena was already there. Scrambled down the embankment and slipped through the side door of the garage. The floor was slanted enough that I had to brace myself against the wall to keep from sliding. "You're late." Elena's voice echoed. She was standing by the workbench. shivering in a trench coat, holding a heavy industrial flashlight in one hand and a tire iron in the other. Her face was pale, her eyes manic. "The house is moving." "Elena," I said, keeping my voice low. "We shouldn't be here." "Open it," she commanded. Pointing the tire iron at the far wall, he walked over to the false panel behind. The tool rack, I hadn't touched this keypad in years. I punched in the code, 0815. The date we got married, the hydraulic locks hissed a sound that seemed deafening in the quiet garage. I pulled the heavy lead-lined door open. The room was small, barely a closet inside. Stacked floor to ceiling on reinforced shelving were rows of metallic, silver-gray bricks. Elena gasped. She pushed past me, dropping the tire iron. "Silver? Is it silver?" "Platinum." I lied. Raw industrial platinum left over from a government contract. I wasn't supposed to have untraceable worth, about $4 million. She let out a sob of pure greed. She reached out, grabbing one of the bricks with both hands. It was heavy. She struggled to lift it, clutching it to her chest. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew you were holding out on me. This pays for everything. The house, the divorce, the lawyers. I win. Arthur, I finally win." A sound like a gunshot rang out from the sub-basement below us. The floor beneath our feet dropped 3 inches instantly. The garage door frame buckled, shattering the glass windows. "We have to go," I yelled, grabbing her arm. "The foundation is shearing." "No." She shook me off. She grabbed a canvas tool bag from the bench and started frantically shoving the heavy bricks into it. "Help me carry them." "Elena, leave it. The weight is too much." Not leaving poor," she screamed, her face contorted. "I'm taking it all." The house gave another violent lurch. The angle of the floor increased. The tool bag, now filled with 5 or 6 bricks, slid across the floor and slammed into the garage. Doralena scrambled after it, crawling on her hands and knees. She grabbed the strap of the bag. "Arthur, help me." I looked at her. I looked at the open door leading to safety, and then I looked at the lead-lined room. "I can't help you with that, Elena," I said sadly, "because if you take that bag, you'll never make it up the slope." The garage tilted again. I lost my footing and slid toward the edge. I grabbed a support pillar. Elena was sliding faster, the weight of the bag dragging her toward the crumbling precipice where the driveway had already fallen away. "Let go of the bag," I roared. She looked at the bag. She looked at the dark, churning ocean below. The bag was anchoring her to death, but her greed was anchoring her to the bag for a split second. I thought she was going to ride it all the way down, but survival instinct finally kicked in. She screamed and released the strap. The bag flew off the edge, disappearing into the darkness. Elena clawed at the concrete, her fingernails breaking as she tried to scramble up the steep, slick floor. I reached out, extending my hand as far as I could. She grabbed my wrist. Her grip was like a vice. I pulled. I dug my boots into the doorframe and hauled her up. Inch by inch, fighting gravity and the dying house, we scrambled out of the side door and onto the wet grass of the lawn. Sprinting toward the road, we didn't stop running until we reached the Trilanu. Turned back just in time. With a sound like thunder, the main support column of the Vance estate finally gave way. The entire mansion, the glass, the steel, the marble, the memories slid gracefully, almost slowly, off the cliff face. It crashed into the ocean below, sending up a massive plume of white water. Silence returned to the cliffside. The rain began to fall again. Elena fell to her knees in the mud. Sobbing, she watched the waves swallow her dream home. "My platinum," she wailed. $4 million gone. "It's all gone." I stood over her. Catching my breath, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a cigarette. I didn't smoke, but I kept them for job sites. "It wasn't platinum, Elena," I said quietly. She stopped crying and looked up at me, her face streaked with mud and mascara. "What?" "It was lead," I said. "Just lead. I used that room to store the counterweights for the cantilever system. I told you it was illegal, precious metal, so you would come here tonight." "Why?" she whispered, horror dawning on her face. "Why would you do that?" "Because," I said, reaching into my other pocket and pulling out a small, battered USB drive. "I needed you distracted in the garage so I could get into the security room and retrieve this." "What is that?" "The cloud backup isn't automatic," I explained. "This drive contains the 4K video and audio recordings from inside the house for the last 6 months. It has you admitting to your lawyer that you hid assets, it has you planning to frame me, and it has the footage of you and Joxwell doing things that violate the morality clause of your alimony agreement. She stared at the drive. She looked back at the ocean where the platinum was sinking to the bottom. You have nothing. She hissed, the house is gone. The house was a liability. I said, but this drive? This drive saves me $10,000 a month in alimony payments, and since the house collapsed due to your negligence, which I can prove because you fired the maintenance crew, you still owe the bank for the mortgage. I turned and started walking toward my truck. Arthur, she screamed, you can't leave me here. I have no car. I have no home. I stopped. I didn't look back. You wanted the estate. Elena, you signed the papers. You own the land. I gestured to the muddy, empty scar on the cliff. It's all yours. Check the foundation next time. I walked away into the darkness behind me. The only sound was the rain hitting the mud and the distant, rhythmic crashing of the waves against the shore.